the meeting room. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, is everyone in? All right, it's 10:04. We can go ahead and call this meeting to order. Joanna, did you want to give everyone a welcome before we get started?
Yes, well, just always nice to say welcome to everyone. Appreciate everyone being on. Sorry to the team in Sacramento that I'm not there in person, but someone decided to back into the side of my car and broke the wheel. So I could not drive. A flatbed picked it up this morning and took it in to get repaired. But anyway, I think we have a really good agenda. I'm really excited about hearing about the Bay Area update. And I'm talking about the construction industry. So with that, I'll let you get it started.
Thank you. All right, we called the meeting to order at 10:04 a.m. Welcome, everyone. Brooke, roll call.
Emily, let's just do roll call via Zoom. So I'll just collect the information as we roll. No need to interrupt the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, we will do roll call via Zoom. The meeting process, as a reminder, this ad hoc committee meeting is being conducted by teleconference on the Zoom platform. This meeting is being recorded. By attending the meeting, attendees consent to being recorded. The meeting's primary location is here in Sacramento at the Foundation for California Community Colleges. Members of the public may attend and participate in this meeting virtually by Zoom or in person at the Foundation. CWDB board members, please keep your cameras on throughout the duration of the meeting. If you have technical difficulties that prevent you from appearing on camera, please note those difficulties in the Zoom chat. A link to this meeting agenda can be found on the CWDB webpage at cwdb.ca.gov under About Us, Our Board, 2026 Meetings. If teleconference access is significantly disrupted and cannot be restored within a reasonable time, the meeting may be canceled or rescheduled. A note about public comment. Public comment is now open and will be heard after each agenda item and again prior to meeting adjournment. Teleconference participants may make a comment during the appropriate comment periods by clicking the raise hand button on the Zoom platform. CWDB staff will designate and unmute participants to allow them to provide comments. Public comment will also be accepted via email at boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov or by being recognized by the chair. We can allow just 2 minutes each comment per subject. So please make your comments concise and to the point. All public comments received by email will be read out loud during the public comment period noted on the agenda and will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. With that, we'll get on with the main content of our agenda today with a Bay Area regional update by Michael Wiafe.
Good morning. Thank you, and pleasure seeing all of you. I'm presenting this update on behalf of Kind Prayer, our executive director, who is actually visiting another region at this exact moment, and the board will have an opportunity to discuss some of those insights. The energy and innovation that we encountered in the Bay Area was absolutely phenomenal. I'm excited to walk you through some of these highlights. Our first stop was at Mount Diablo Adult Education, in which we were able to speak with more than a dozen crucial regional stakeholders and heard a lot of suggestions to include health programs in our ETPL, or eligible training provider list, and the desire for local boards to grant accreditation and certification for some of the local programs. There's also discussion in the importance of blended revenue streams and adapting new healthcare home delivery models that place EMS and paramedics at the tip of the spear. One of the most impressive aspects of the stop was the EMS core program. Some of you may have heard of that, where we were able to watch students perform CPR and other simulations. According to trainers and students, this model is igniting and upward trajectory for all aspects of students' lives. In fact, we were able to do a connection to the Inland Empire region, who is also looking to upscale their successful EMS training program. And it provided us a valuable opportunity to share best practice that we're seeing in another part of the state. We also visited the Working Waterfront Coalition, where the industry engagement and maritime pipeline work is ongoing. There are deep ties and robust collaboration among industry participants in this area, and are continuing to meet existing demand and exploring new building capacity, especially as the electrification of the SF Bay ferry system is on the horizon. We also had a very productive discussion with Verity Mobile Energy Storage that talked to us about their training program called Green Force. These efforts are to take a hands-on approach to building sustainable workforce by providing support in the recruitment, training, and placement phases, while sticking around for ongoing employee and employer assistance. And we're interested in learning more and continuing to bring this successful training model to scale. We also discussed a critical conversation, which is housing, with RSF Housing Connects. They sit at the critical intersection of housing and workforce development, renovated blighting homes, making them energy efficient, connecting them to local first-time buyers in the Richmond area, and aim to expand to Pittsburgh and Antioch, other parts of the Bay Area. Our final stop was a great conversation with the First Five in collaboration with the Contra Costa County Workforce Development Board, underscoring the integral role that childcare plays in workforce development. It is not only an industry in and of itself, but it also allows the broader workforce to function by enabling parents to focus on their work. This discussion was critical for us, and we continue to engage in childcare conversations. Very excited to hear from some of our regional partners and leaders who are in the conversation here today, who can add even more color than I was able to provide from our regional tour. And at this point, I will conclude and move on to the next step of the agenda. Back to you, those in Sacramento.
Thank you. Any public comment on the Bay Area regional update?
No public comments.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, any public comment on the Zoom?
Well, we have a number of leaders with us today. Tamia Brown is the workforce director at Contra Costa. I saw Sophia from Oakland. I saw Tamara from Richmond. Great workforce development board leaders. I have some comments, but I'd rather hear from the leaders first. So let me turn it over to Tamia, and she can make some comments about this.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks, Bob. Well, I think Michael gave a great overview of the tour the state board had in the Bay Area. We were really excited to share some of the great work that's happening in the Bay Area, including all the projects that he mentioned. Just want to say, you know, one of our largest investments is in the healthcare sector, and we are moving folks from entry-level positions in healthcare on to paramedics, and we are looking to expand that as much as possible, as long as we still continue to receive funding to support all the great work. We feel like we have some apprenticeship work in other occupations that we're working on, and looking forward to doing that. We are also aligning with the Bay Area Jobs First initiatives in the sectors that we are focusing on. Early childhood care and education is something that we are leveraging dollars from our county, our Measure X funds, to really improve the workforce initiatives there. So I'll stop there. I'll pass it on to any of my other colleagues who would like to share.
To me, just a quick comment. I was listening to an economist talking about job gains in 25, and the one sector that is really responsible for the bulk of it is healthcare. And the projection is that going to 26 and beyond, that healthcare will be the area of greatest growth due to the aging of the population. And that if you looked at all other sectors, government being at the very bottom in terms of not just job, it wasn't job growth, but job losses, that, you know, leaning in and investing in healthcare workforce development is going to be kind of unsustainable.
Great, thank you.
Any other public comment?
Okay, well, I have a couple comments. So, I've been a member in the Bay Area for over 30 years. I've worked with Tamia and the other leaders of the workforce boards for 5 to 10 years. And the health program is really outstanding. When kind of in the group came to visit, we took them to one of the PWA sites. That's the Public Works Alliance that has 12 training programs, EMS apprenticeship programs in the state. It's a really different kind of training program. It's called a flip training program, where folks really learn. The instructors sort of help, and the students learn on their own and in team approach. And it really started as an experiment, and it's really fantastic. The retention rates are well over 95%, which we've never had in our EMS, both pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs for the paramedics. So it's a phenomenal program, and we spent a lot of time there.
Bob, how many people does that serve on an annual basis?
So in our program, we have 3 cohorts over 18 months. There's 20 to 25 students in each program, so 75. The other 11 sites are very similar. So, that's almost 1,000 new EMS pre-apprenticeship, and then apprenticeship to paramedics, obviously a few less numbers than paramedics, but a phenomenal program in the state, and particularly around what the retention rate is looking like. And it has complete cooperation and coordination with the local ambulance companies, fire departments, some hospitals, because there's a lot of different opportunities now for paramedics and for EMS folks, EMTs. So it's a pretty phenomenal program. But in the Bay Area, we have almost 100 direct or indirect health training programs with 1,000 people a year. It's a phenomenal program. We have a huge partnership with the Bay Area Health Workforce Partnership. The Bay Area Health Workforce Partnership is a partnership of almost all the major health employers in the Bay Area that are interested in those terrible words, equity and diversity, which we continue to move on. Not always so easy for those companies, but by having that partnership and having that direct coordination with the local workforce development boards, it makes for a great partnership and really successful and really high retention rates. So we were really proud to have the folks from the workforce board come. We probably talked their ear off a little bit more about what we needed as opposed to what they were offering, but it was really good. And then there are so many other programs in the other workforce boards as well besides health that we visited. So it was a really, really successful visit. And I couldn't be prouder to work with the directors of the workforce board, Sophia and Tamara, and Tamia and Rhonda in the area. They're all very progressive and really dedicated to doing training in the community. So it was really a fantastic visit.
Thank you, Bob. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to the Bay Area regional update?
Again, I just have a question for the people who were, participated. Were there areas that you wished either could be support and development beyond, what you updated us on? Like, where are the needs in your view?
If I could, I would just say that, we are really looking at the effects of HR1 and the impacts to individuals who are going to be work requirements and work activities. So we know that at some point, folks are going to be coming through our doors, and that's going to increase our need for services. So that's something that we're kind of positioning ourselves for and preparing. So that's something that's coming.
And I guess just to Michael, any observations overall that you saw in terms of needs?
Maybe this is a good opportunity to segue into a prepared presentation that I know some folks put together, and maybe you might get into some of those topics. Would that be okay?
That would be great. Thank you.
Let's
All
get up
right,
the
I mean, we're up.
slides. Yep, we're working on getting up the slides.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
Well, while you all are pulling that together, maybe I can just start with the intro of myself. Good morning, everyone. My name is Iwena Pena. I am the Workforce Director for the City and County of San Francisco. I'm really honored to be here today to co-present with our partners in the regional work that we've been leading with All Home. Jay Banfield is here to help represent some of that work. But maybe we could also tell you a little bit about myself, as well as like our office for those of you who I haven't met. And since while some of you are up here for the tour, though San Francisco was not one of the sites that you visit and invite you back, we have sector training programs in construction. I'm sure you all heard of City Build. It's one of our marquee programs that a lot of other regions have been able to model their construction sector training programs after. We're really proud of that, in addition to the work that we are leading through our healthcare sector, tech, hospitality, and education. So so excited that there's so much other great work happening in the Bay Area, and inclusive of the work that we're doing here in San Francisco. So our office leads supports rather over 24 city agencies and departments in their workforce development programs, in those core sectors that I outlined, but as well as some of the emerging technologies. And so industries and technologies, excuse me. And so that leads to our office enrolling like over 300 clients each year. We have about 80% placement rate, and that really like supports the backbone. I think that has really helped in the design and the conversations that we've been able to participate and lead with All Home and this regional effort. And so just a little highlight there in that, we started working on this when it was surf back in like 2021. And that, though that predates my time, like seeing the outline of just all of the efforts that led up to now this great legislation and the support that the state is putting in to ensure that the workforce boards across the state are supported in doing this regional lift. And so since being awarded in 2023, we've worked hand in hand with alongside All Home to hold up like the Bay Area region. And I actually heard a term Bay Delta region. I kind of like that, leaning into that and supporting what this looks like as we look into other sectors for expansion. And we spent a lot of time talking about maritime, but also I think that that's inclusive of healthcare, first responder needs as that starts to evolve. So I want to highlight a couple of things before I hand it over to Jay. And just like I mentioned, San Francisco's office has a strong point in having to support so many various and different departments. And so that's been really key in our role in supporting the regional lift here. I think the approach that our office takes in doing a lot of the work in coordination with the business community, and the employer relationships that we have there to help drive like the conversation around what a qualified workforce looks like, and some of the skills and training opportunities that our employers that are waiting on the other side to receive like these folks are looking for. I think that we've been good partners in supporting like this larger regional project and hope to continue to do so in ensuring that we've got the appropriate stakeholders at the table, but also that we're elevating some of the concerns or areas of support that have come up in these conversations that we've had with our partners across the region. So with that, I'd love to introduce Jay, who you all, I'm sure, know, but for those who haven't met him yet, I know him to be a social entrepreneur. Similarly, has done a lot of work in the private, public, nonprofit, and education sector. And then the one that I find most exciting is our shared love of baseball, and youth workforce development. But as the Chief Economic Mobility Officer for All Home, I think that the work that they do, but also like Jay's lens in bringing so many perspectives to how we approach homelessness and just the duality, that poverty, and the cyclical barriers that come for like this population to employment, and how poverty is like persistent in that, is really like great to be able to like approach with their background like in that. So With that, I'll hand it over to Jay, who will go through this presentation with us.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for making the time this morning. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing in partnership with SFOEWD. It's also great to see a lot of our partners in the room. I see Tamia, Tamara, Sophia, and obviously SFOEWD. And as I think about the work, before I launch into the description of it, really grateful for the partnership with SFOEWD and really providing that backbone organization to organize on the public side. So I think about the work that we're trying to do through Jobs First, that public-private partnership is incredibly important. And one of the things that we found really compelling working through and with the workforce development boards is as we think about job creation, how are we preparing our residents to occupy those jobs? And having those two perspectives held constantly, I think is really useful for what we're trying to achieve with California Jobs First. So I will start, and I recognize there are some people on the call who are probably deeply familiar with SURF, now Jobs First, and others maybe it's a little bit new. So I'll try to walk that in between space just to orient people just enough to create some conversation. I would start with the vision from SURF originally, and what we adopted as the Bay Area Collaborative is thinking about how do we build a sustainable economy moving towards carbon neutrality? How do we focus on high road jobs that are well-paying jobs? How do we think about economic development and centering the worker and community voice there with a focus in on equitable outcomes? I know there was a comment earlier about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that is something that is a thread throughout the work that you hopefully will see. And from that, we had really four major objectives as a collaborative. As one is we wanted to drive deep, meaningful community engagement. Two is that we wanted to identify projects to receive funding, and I'll describe in some detail those projects that we've allocated California Jobs First money towards. But as we've said to our collaborative, if that's all that we did, we will have failed the promise of this program. So we're also thinking about how do we lay the groundwork for ongoing regional economic development work, which feels particularly crucial for the Bay Area. I think many of you who are familiar with the Bay Area would understand that there has been a lack of that regional coordination, and we do operate as a regional economy on some levels. And how do we recognize that? And then the fourth driver for us and goal that we had is to leverage other funds, recognizing in a budget constrained environment that California Jobs First wouldn't provide all the funding necessary to realize the vision of the program. And so how do we leverage private capital, federal capital, et cetera? So we can go to the next slide. Thank you for whoever's driving. I think it might be you, Michael. Good to see you as well. I won't go through this in painstaking detail other than to highlight a few of the milestones for those of you familiar with California Jobs First, is that part of the work was to identify and provide a snapshot of what the economy looks like right now in the Bay Area, which is the regional plan part 2. Then, as I alluded to earlier, part of the program was to distribute $9 million of catalyst funding into projects. And I have a slide here that will give you a sense of what those projects are. Then we were asked through the program to provide a snapshot, or not a snapshot, I should say, multiple hundreds pages of what the economy should look like based on the feedback from all the stakeholders, labor, business, CBOs, regional planning groups, to try to coalesce around what are the priorities for the Bay Area that we want to lean into. And in the course of doing that, we identified a set of priority sectors, which again, I'll go through in more detail, and then hiring consultants to drive activation plans for those particular priority sectors. And so we are in the midst of all that work. And as you know, California Jobs First is set to expire at the end of September in 2026. But as I say to people who will listen to me, which is an increasingly small group of people when we consider my kids in that group, but that is not the end. That's not the finish line. That really is, I think, the beginning of the promise of this work. We've done all this regional planning work. We've aligned around priority sectors. We're developing plans to activate them and to grow those priority sectors. And that work needs to continue. And I think that's work that the Bay Area needs to lean into to figure out what that looks like. So we'll go to the next slide. So Catalyst Funding Awards, if you are interested in learning more about the projects, you can go to our website at All Home, and then you can click on these projects. But the projects were focused on empowering communities and workers, creating quality jobs, and addressing long-standing inequities and climate vulnerabilities. The projects, we had 10 projects that we allocated the $9 million to. They represent the full geographic spread of the Bay Area, which is no small task given the 9 counties of the Bay Area. But again, if people are interested, you can go and learn more about those. Then we can go to the next slide, Michael. Again, a little bit more, just double clicking on the sectors that are funding through those Catalyst projects. There was a lot of interest around small business and worker co-ops. A lot of what came up in our region is around sustainable environmental management. Manufacturing, battery storage, and other renewable energy technologies are a theme you'll see continuously through this collaborative and this presentation. Sustainable environmental management, transportation electrification, childcare and early childhood education, which came up earlier, small business and worker co-op, particularly around agriculture and viticulture, and then construction. Those are the industries or sectors that were funded through the Catalyst project. Next slide, please. And I mentioned our multiple 100-page document about what we believe the economy should look like for the Bay Area. These are the target sectors and strategies, the foundational economic strategies and the tradable sectors that are identified in that document. I won't go through them in much detail because we don't have that much time here today. But again, that document is also on our website, and it really is that joint vision across all the stakeholders that were in our collaborative. We should mention have a 21-member steering committee, which represents the sectors I alluded to earlier. We have great representation of labor, business interests, community-based organization, environmental justice, regional planning organizations, community colleges, our workforce development boards, et cetera. We can go to the next slide. Then, as I mentioned earlier in the kind of the road diagram, we identified 5 priority sectors that we wanted to do a much deeper dive. And for those of you familiar with California Jobs First, there was funding allocated to develop activation plans. And the way I describe the activation plans is to say it's one thing to say these are important, which is critical, but we're also trying to say, and how do we grow those jobs? If we say these are important to us, then how are we going to bring that to life and to create those jobs in those categories? And as you can see here, the collaborative identified a series of tradable sectors and what we would call catalyst industries. So Joanna, when you talked about healthcare, that came up loud and clear within our collaborative of that is a critical piece of our economic development alongside the early care and education, that those are fundamental pieces that need to be in place in order to drive that job creation. And so that was our collaborative made the decision to target these 5 sectors. What you won't see on this list, but is starting to increasingly appear, and Michael knows this well, as does Tamia and a number of people on this call, maritime and shipbuilding is emerging as a really active space for us. And so we're, I think, probably nestling it into the transportation electrification and as an adjacent thing, but that is another topic that is emerging. We don't have a specific activation plan for it, but there's a lot of energy, no pun intended, in that direction. So next slide, please. This is just a summary of the activities. We're finishing up the Catalyst projects, finalizing the activation plans, seeking additional funding opportunities. We are gathering all of our stakeholders in a symposium to do some matchmaking. And I think that's largely one of the big pieces of the work around California Jobs First is how do we bring together different kinds of partnerships? And we're seeing that over and over again. So we're taking that very seriously, deepening our engagement with the tribal communities. We have regular monthly meetings. Many of you attend those regular meetings. And we're also funding some Know Your Rights trainings. That is one of the things the collaborative decided to allocate some funding toward. And then the last piece, which I think is probably maybe the most critical for this particular group, is thinking about the post 2026 planning work. Again, to say it again, if we end in September 2026 and we say, okay, the work is done, I think that would be criminal, to be quite honest with you. That would, with the promise of the work is that ongoing regional economic development planning work that has to be done in private-public partnerships. It has to be done with and through workforce development boards, tied together with economic development. And that is I think the most exciting and one of the more difficult pieces of work is what's the long tail look like for California Jobs First. So I think with that, I will end the presentation. Maybe we could stop sharing and obviously happy to have any dialogue that you'd like to have.
With you, Jay. I want to just kind of defer over to Mark in Sacramento, who is our regional specialist working on the Bay Area efforts, and in case there's anything he wants to add.
Yeah, I guess just to connect this first topic to the second one, I want to highlight that there are 4 pre-apprenticeship training partnerships in the Bay that are designed to connect folks from underserved communities to apprenticeship opportunities in the trades. And there's really significant complementarity between those efforts, which are supported by the High Road Construction Careers Initiative at CWDB, and what the Jobs First Regional Collaborative is doing. I know that Louise Howerhan, who's our special point of contact with the HRCC program based in the South Bay, is on the steering committee. So is Jordan Ackerman from CTWY, which is based in the East Bay. And one of the catalyst projects, the one that's being where Tradeswomen Inc. are the fiscal lead, that ties into the HRCC partnership that's based in the North Bay as well, to try and recruit more women into the trades through engagement with them at the high school level. So I just wanted to put a flag in that, so that's in the back of your mind when we go to the second topic today about construction, that these partnerships are very visible and very robust in the Bay Area, and there's a lot of alignment between them and the Jobs First collaborative.
Thanks, Mark. And also just wanted to say it was Miranda in Sacramento who was advancing the slides as well. So thank you, Miranda, and Linda for helping out there. Joanna, did that answer your question?
Yes, that was super helpful. Thank you. And Jay, when is the symposium that you talked about?
We're finalizing the date, Joanna. We're looking at April in the timeframe, but I'll put a note to make sure we flag it for you in particular.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Yes, Doctor. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. I just wondered one question about healthcare sector. You know, I used to do that work like 20 years ago in Los Angeles County. And from what I read in the papers and hear on the radio is huge need for nurses, RNs. And I wonder if you have any career ladders there, not just training in the emergency medical sector. And then the other question was around the battery manufacturing and the transportation electrification. Have you been impacted by the changing federal interest in all this and funding?
Thank you, Factor. And to answer your first question, we are developing the activation plan around healthcare. I think we also see that that gap that exists within nursing as well. And if it's useful, we'd be happy to get the consultant who's working on the activation plan to talk to you more specifically about that. But we are definitely seeing that gap as well, and recognizing the critical need to fill that. The second, I would say we have not felt, I mean, personally, we're developing the plans around advanced manufacturing, battery manufacturing, et cetera. So I can't say that we've yet felt any of the impact at the federal level, but I think there are probably other people on the call who are more actively involved in the space, in the job creation space, that might have a different view on that. But we're still in that planning phase, so I can't say that we've personally encountered that.
I'd like to add, Diane, just a little bit more information on the nursing program that you asked about. We have a number of obviously nursing programs in the Bay Area, and all of them are impacted. All have waiting lists. We certainly can't take care of all the folks that would love to be trained, and we certainly need a huge amount more nurses in the Bay Area. Most of our programs have focused on the BSN and MSN programs and the more specialty nurses. The community colleges are doing a great job with, all of our associate nurses, but we really are trying to concentrate on the BSN and MSN. We've looked at some examples for some apprenticeships. We haven't been successful in apprenticeships in nursing in the Bay Area. They have the one in Sacramento, of course. But obviously it's a huge demand and a huge area, and every college that has a nursing program is involved with our consortium in the Bay Area for nursing.
Why do you say you haven't been successful? What has impacted that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
You said you haven't been successful with apprenticeship programs in nursing in the Bay Area. Why is that?
That's because for the most part, apprenticeships really sort of demand a pre-employment type of structure. And most of the major employers do not like to commit to hiring up front. There are a number of labor and union rules that are involved in that. And there's a number of, the way that they've been used to operating. They want people to go through the apprenticeship programs, but then they want to pick and choose who they hire. So we haven't really got the sponsors on the employer side to commit to the apprenticeship programs.
Yeah, perhaps that's an area where some people can focus and be supportive.
Sure.
Any other board members wanting to discuss anything on this topic? All right, thank you guys. One last call for public comment on this item. Do we have any online public comment?
I don't see anything on YouTube or the inbox.
Okay, thank you. Any in-person public comment? Any Zoom public comment? All right, I think we will move on then to construction in California.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Good morning, everyone. Today we'll be discussing California's construction industry, the opportunities it presents, and what it means for the future of workforce development in our state. That's slide 6. Randall, you got it. I'll open the discussion by providing a brief overview of the HRCC initiative and our ongoing partnership with Caltrans, before inviting Alison Joe, who's sitting to my right of CalStaff, to say a few words, followed by board members Jeremy Smith, who's in the room with us today, and Leonard Gonzalez, who's on Zoom. The High Road Construction Careers Program supports 13 pre-apprenticeship training partnerships around the state that are designed to prepare and connect priority populations to apprenticeship opportunities in the trades. These partnerships consist of workforce development boards, community-based organizations, educational institutions, building trades councils, joint apprenticeship training committees, and contractors, with each of these partners contributing to one or more of the phases along a continuum of outreach, preparation, and placement. HRCC began in 2014 with Prop 39, which supported energy efficiency retrofits in public schools and set aside funding for pre-apprenticeship training partnerships to meet the demand for workers. The model expanded under SB1 in 2017, which funded transportation infrastructure and included a workforce development carve-out that built on those existing training partnerships. After further development through California Climate Investments and the Resilient Workforce Fund, the same demand-driven approach now applies to SB 150, the latest investment in HRCC, which will support pre-apprenticeship training to meet the demand for apprentices resulting from Caltrans infrastructure projects. I'm on slide 7 now. So HRCC is a demand-driven approach. in keeping with the governor's strategic plan on workforce development. Local building trades councils and joint apprenticeship training committees are required partners, ensuring training is directly connected to apprenticeship openings. To take a local example here in Sacramento, a community-based organization called People Working Together and the Sac Sierra Building Trades Council have created a training partnership. The partnership includes local trades and their respective signatory contractors. So when McCarthy Construction was working on the UC Davis Tower, PWT had monthly meetings with them and their subcontractors to identify the workforce needs and determine how to meet those needs with folks from the communities outlined in the local hire agreement. It was the same thing for Whiting Turner on the Aggie Square project in Oak Park, where they exceeded the local hire goal by over 80%. HRCC participants are prepared through training and supportive services. Training is delivered through the MC3 or multi-craft core curriculum, a pre-apprenticeship curriculum designed by the National Building Trades. And this is paired with supportive services that help participants finish training through stipends, childcare, and transportation support. B, prepare them for apprenticeship requirements like obtaining a driver's license and tools. And C, to retain their employment with skills for the long haul, such as financial literacy and conflict management. On slide 8 now. I'll close by returning to the partnership with Caltrans that I mentioned earlier. Next slide. Next slide. One more slide. I'll close by returning to the partnership with Caltrans that I mentioned earlier. This partnership resulted from Senate Bill 150, legislation designed to enhance California's training pipeline, community benefits, and quality job standards in state and federal infrastructure programs. To that end, it leverages the existing HRCC system to ensure that there are enough qualified candidates to meet the demand for apprentices on Caltrans infrastructure projects. The infrastructure investments that are currently underway and that are due to break ground present significant opportunity, and there are many Californians in need of that opportunity. The purpose of HRCC is to intentionally connect these two realities, and we are honored to partner with Caltrans in advancing that shared objective. To that end, I want to thank our partners at Caltrans for their commitment to engaging in this collaboration with us. And likewise, I want to thank Jeremy Smith and the State Building Trades and all of their regional affiliates for the work that they have done to support the HRCC initiative over the past 12 years. And that concludes this brief overview. And at this point, I'd like to pass it over to Alison Joe, Deputy Secretary for Equity and Workforce at CalSTA, and invite her to say a few words about the partnership from her perspective.
Thanks. I'm going to try this. So I turned my video on my laptop, but I'm also still speaking to the room and using the room camera. So I'm going to focus more on the camera since there's a number of you online, and I just want to make sure that. And I'm not looking at the video, so I can't tell what I might look like on the video. So that's probably actually not a bad thing either, in a distraction sort of way. Good morning. My name is Allison Joe. I am the Deputy Secretary for Equity and Workforce at the State Transportation Agency, or CalSTA. One of the things that I wanted to just do is give you a little bit of a background on CalSTA itself and what it does and the universe that it does, a little bit about my role, and probably a little bit more about the partnership that we're looking at with Caltrans and work moving forward. First of all, the State Transportation Agency is ginormous. Technically, and it covers everything from Caltrans, the High-Speed Rail Authority, the State Transportation Commission, California Highway Patrol, the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Board of Pilot Commissioners, and the Office of Traffic Safety. I believe I've covered all of them, but I might have missed one, and even that is challenging in some ways. But anything that is essentially helps people move in a vehicle of some sort or of their own accord through biking and walking. Or rolling. The work that I do as Deputy Secretary is relatively new. I was appointed to this role and started a little over a year ago, just as the federal administration was getting going on all things equity, and I am super glad to be here for it. Honestly, it is really one of the most rewarding things to be able to understand how things work in times of challenge, and what we are doing in California, and particularly on the ground, to really highlight and really acknowledge what we need to be doing better and stronger. So there's a lot going on in that role. When I came into this role, the concepts of equity and workforce apply both internally to our departments at CalSTA as well as externally. So thinking about transportation policy and equity in that realm, also workforce in that realm. So how are we supporting our employees in our state agency and departments? How are we thinking about workforce externally and recruiting and supporting and sustaining our workforce externally? It is not a small job. Being the first in this role has given me a lot of opportunities to kind of explore a lot of things. But one of the things I'm most grateful for was actually the foundation that was laid by SB 150 and some of that work. So I wanted to really think, just at least acknowledge where I am in this process as I kind of came through. I've worked through state government before, but doing a lot of interdisciplinary work. So a lot of what I do is thinking about how systems work, how sometimes there are disconnects between industry sectors, systems, an engineer or a planner versus someone on the ground who's building things, and versus someone who's living or working in those environments. Completely different, right? And so how implementation really works is beyond just construction, although that's what we're here to talk about, but also thinking about what we can do to support the ongoing efforts that building or that road or that bike lane creates. So I'm really glad to be here just with that little bit of introduction, because I'm new, because there's newness to this role, but there's a ton of things that I'm jumping immediately into. One of the things that I do want to just talk about is just the importance of transportation and the dollars that are coming through through both federal and state efforts. We are looking at significant investments even in this current time frame. Federal government continues to be very invested in building more transportation improvements. And we are continuing to kind of move forward and support what we can to make sure that we continue to have a strong transportation infrastructure. In order to do that, though, we are looking at really trying to build out stronger partnerships through our workforce development partners. And what we are looking at, particularly through the HRCC program and SB 150, is really looking at how do we actually start doing this and start doing it a little bit better. This is something that my colleagues at Labor and Workforce Development Agency, when I had initially started, but we had these conversations, were actually feeling very, the word is not, there was a hunger and an interest and an actual desire to figure out how to figure out transportation, because it's such a significant component of our economy, because there's an absolute need for trained workers and a need to sustain that work over time, because projects last for 20 years. Construction projects and phases last for a really long time. So one of those things so really grateful for that work and to begin thinking about it and jumping in. With the HRCC efforts, my background in local government, I was actually really excited to connect with the staff here, because I'd done some work around hybrid training partnerships in the Sacramento region, particularly at Aggie Square and with UC Davis, in those roles, have really interested in trying to develop those in a stronger way and with our transportation workforce. One of the things that I'm most excited about is actually thinking about this from an on-the-ground perspective. So Caltrans, through the Caltrans and looking at pipeline of work, and also thinking about how that fits within our districts, where the greatest needs are, where the greatest opportunities are. Low-hanging fruit does not necessarily mean the biggest districts regionally. It could be the smaller districts, but with more focused approaches, and really trying to refine that as opposed to, and really identifying where we are is really something that I think I'd like to spend a little bit more time on. It's again, thinking about the state is this really large operation, Caltrans in particular, has different muscles and different sets of muscles. And in one region, you will find strength in particular trades, in particular training programs, in particular partnerships, and trying to figure out, and that's on the workforce development side. On the Caltrans side, equally challenging, because you have the same partners or different partners having different strengths there. So what I'm hoping to see through an ongoing partnership with Caltrans, with CWDB, is really thinking through where we can best maximize our resources here. This is a one-time investment over 4 years, and we're hoping to really think about how that investment is a proof of concept for longer-term investments through other ways. I mean, this is the opportunities are really endless if we can think about where there might be greater partnerships down the road. This is where I would actually ask that our regional partners here and our local partners who have had really strong construction, transportation partnerships, the California Jobs First has been a catalyst for, but also kind of a spotlight on things that are already existing in our work and in our worlds. And so trying to highlight that, particularly for transportation and for construction, would be really helpful, I think, for us as we start kind of honing in on what muscles do we need to strengthen, where are there already opportunities for improvement or for ongoing work and partnership. I think that is the bulk of what I was going to really just cover. It's a very high level just approach. Apologies for not having slides. I'm happy to chat with any of you down the line if there's any additional questions about what we're doing at CalSTA, how to connect more deeply with Caltrans, and if there's any other opportunities from that point in that regard. So I'll pause there.
Questions or comments? No? Okay. Thank you, Allison.
Madam Chair, if I may, Jeremy Smith is in the room with us and would like to say a few words on this topic.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everybody hear me okay? Can you hear me okay, Madam Chair? All right. Well, thanks for doing this today. Madam Chair, I'm not sure who's in the state board office. It seems like everybody who works for the state board is here today. It's nice to see so many familiar faces in the room today. Thank you all for being here and on the call too. I thought maybe it would be good for my few minutes here just to go back to where I started on this board, where the board was when I started on it. Governor Brown appointed me to this board. I can't remember the exact year. Governor Schwarzenegger appointed me to this board last couple of years of his term. And back then, the workforce development system seemed to be about getting to people after they were already looking for a job or out of work, which is still a function of all the local boards in this board. It's important to keep those folks in mind, right? We can prepare all we want to get people ready for a career, but people are just going to lose their jobs. But there was very little talked about back then about where we are today. And I feel like this board under the chair's leadership and the former chair and Executive Director Kaina and his predecessor moved the board to how do we get people ready for work or ready for a new career before they've lost their career or before they're looking for new work. And I think that it's done a great service to the people of California and to the construction industry. You know, the term jobs first itself kind of signifies this. Jobs first, right? Let's figure out how to get people into a career while they're still starting their career, while they're thinking about what they want to do with their future. So I think it's great where we are. You factor in the construction industry, the two sides to the workforce development system. First, obviously, for construction apprentices and journeymen and journeywomen, we need job sites. We need places for construction workers to go to work. I've said this many times. Mark will roll his eyes or probably nod off because he's heard these talking points before. Some of you have heard this as well, but construction apprentices don't sit at a table in a room behind computers and learn. There's a little bit of that, but they're on a job site. A construction worker apprentice is a construction worker. They may not be a journeyman, they may not be a journeywoman. They're learning under both of those journey level workers. But they are doing work on a job site. And so the state of California, through Prop 39, through SB 1, through SB 150, has done a great job investing in creating job sites. It's what I do in my day job as a lobbyist. I spend time at the state capitol advocating for an investment and funding to put people to work. The other side of that coin is preparing people for those job sites. So our apprenticeship programs, obviously we think are the best in the world, do a great job of training workers, but how do we get people before they become an apprentice? Sort of in that jobs first nomenclature, right? How do we get people ready to be an apprentice? And so this really stood out to us back in 2017, starting with Prop 39, but especially in 2017, around SB 1, which was the gas tax increase. The first time it had been increased in California in 25 years. And it was going to provide $52 billion over 10 years to do the thing that all of us as voters in this room and on this call want, is better roads, better bridges. Well, that's a lot of work. We were thrilled. And we worked very closely with the state board, with Governor Brown, to figure out how to incorporate pre-apprenticeship into this space, how to make sure that workers were not only ready to join an apprenticeship program, but knew what they were getting into, because there was going to be a lot of demand. There is a lot of demand on our apprenticeship programs in the construction industry to provide the workforce that we need. And so we worked very closely with the board, with Governor Brown, to incentivize the use of the multi-craft core curriculum, our pre-apprenticeship training curriculum, within the HRCC system. And Mark did a great job of sort of detailing where that system is now, doing very good work with state board staff and our colleagues over at Caltrans to figure out how to get the next iteration of funding for that HRCC system. But what we've decided, what we learned is, let's make sure apprentices know what a day on a construction site is. Let's give them exposure to all of the crafts. And again, another example I use over and over, so that when somebody thinks they want to be an iron worker, we know that they are afraid of heights before they're on the 45th floor of a building with no walls, no ceiling, and no floor, right? Maybe electrical work is better for me, or maybe being a laborer is better for me, or maybe I want to be an operating engineer. So that's what this pre-apprenticeship curriculum does. And it gets these folks ready for a career in construction from, I need to be on the job site at 6 because we stop at 2 because it's 105 at 3. Right? To, I can't show up in flip-flops. To, I want to do this career. It's the whole gamut. And so I'm really grateful for the partnership we have with the state board. And in creating that system and sort of having it expand to what it is now, our HRCC partners up and down the state learned another valuable lesson. And it's, how do we keep workers in their pre-apprenticeship training program or in their apprenticeship training program? And we've learned that another good use of taxpayer dollars is helping apprentices and pre-apprentices finish what they start. And so we have of course, the ERICA program, providing childcare stipends. Childcare is something that falls in our society predominantly on the shoulders of women. But there are men getting ERICA childcare stipends as well, single parents or folks who are married. providing that cover, especially in that first or 2 years of their apprenticeship training program, where because of collective bargaining, apprentices are earning more than the minimum wage, but not like a journey level worker. Not the numbers we kind of see, right? $55, $60, $70 per hour. Quick tangent, those big numbers include all of a construction worker's benefits. So part of that big number you see is take home pay, but a big part of it is their benefits. Things like childcare stipends, things like at our pre-apprenticeship HRCC programs, they tell me about stipends for tool belts, for tools. Here's a $200 Home Depot gift card. Get yourself ready for your apprenticeship program. So when you show up on Monday, you're ready to go. Childcare, I said childcare already, gas cards, bus passes. There's just a lot that the Workforce Development Board system can do just to keep folks in their training program. And so we're thrilled with where things stand now in the workforce development part, the construction worker workforce development part of our system. We think the state board is doing great work under the leaders who are there now, Madam Chair, you and Kaina, and the rest of the people around the team, around the table here. And we're excited to keep the HRCC system going so that we all can do what we want, which is get people in their careers right away before they spend time in things they don't like, and then keep them in their careers for the next 40 years. So for the portion of their $75 an hour wage they take home that is their defined benefit pension, they can retire with some dignity at the same time, have a middle-class livelihood to get them to retirement. And I'll just finish on something that Bob had mentioned, another old timer like me on the board, about the apprenticeship system and maybe not working as well in other parts of our economy. Our apprenticeship training system is a joint system. And so we jointly run it and administer it with our employer partners, with our management. And we're the part of the labor movement that gets along better with our management. We don't always have that traditional stereotypical fight, partly because a lot of contractors are journeymen and journeywomen. They came up through the apprenticeship training system and they understand what the training means, and they want to hire workers and who collectively bargain for their wages and benefits. How to transfer that partnership to other parts of our economy, to Bob's industry in the healthcare in particular, but other spaces, is something that Governor Newsom has tried to do during his 2 terms of government, 2 terms as governor, and it's gone slow. And I don't know why that is, but we have to help employers understand what they're getting out of highly skilled and trained workers, and why it's maybe okay to pay them a little more as they're starting out because they're going to get the training they need and they're going to stay employees. They're not going to leave and do some other career because they're going to be in the career they want to be in, and they're going to be making middle-class wages and with benefits at the start. And so I don't know how to transfer that to other parts of our economy, but that's a key component to how our part of the workforce training system works, and which makes it so robust, and which makes that other parts of our economy want to replicate it. I understand why. So I'll pause, say thank you to Mark for inviting me here, and the team for being here, and Madam Chair for you and Kaina coming up with these ad hoc meetings. I think it's a great way to keep the conversation going between our normal board meetings. So thank you. Oh,
Comments or questions from go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you both. I love the model. I love the unionized construction industry. I still wish you had a higher percentage of women in the workforce. It's just been decades of talking about it, and the outcomes aren't that great. But I wondered about the density of labor represented construction workers. Here in Los Angeles, it seems like the residential market is pretty much non-unionized and also represents a lot of Latino workers who have been by the current deportation raids. And it's just devastating down here. And of course, we've been fighting back as well as the governor. But I would love to see really some penetration of the building trades into the residential sector.
Well, we're trying our best. I don't know if that was a question, but I'll answer it anyway. Thank you, Diane, for raising that. It's it's a very robust sector. You know, we need to build about 180,000 housing units a year in California to keep up, and we're barely over 50,000 a year. People will tell you there's different reasons. Developers will say it's too hard, too much red tape to get through. We will argue, especially in this era of you know, a more living wage level minimum wage, that there are places for people to go to make okay money for their families that don't involve, I don't know, framing a house or putting a roof on a newly built house in the middle of July in Imperial County. Right? And it's a lot safer to work somewhere else. And so we have done our best at the state capitol to incentivize the use of California apprentices and paying living wages on the scores of legislation over the last decade that have passed and been signed to try to kickstart our housing economy. The unfortunate reality is that a lot of housing developers would prefer to use the very workers who are fearing for their lives and their families' lives right now, and not use represented workers who deserve and are able to be paid the prevailing wage to do that work. And I would just say one other point about Diane's comment about more women in the trades. We could not agree more. One of the best things about the building trades is that collective bargaining agreements are colorblind. How you identify blind. If you are a journey person, electrician, and the CBA says a journey person electrician in LA County earns $85 per hour, it does not matter what you look like. If you are here legally, if you are a man or a woman, or how you identify, you get that amount. And so it's one of the last places in our economy where everybody earns what it says on the paper. If you've achieved the status that wage level says you earn. So thank you, Diane, for raising that. We're doing our very best. We worked with the Legislative Women's Caucus to create the ERICA system, and we're on ERICA 2.0 now. And I hope it just keeps going. And we're going to spend a lot of political capital in state building trades to make sure that it does when it's time for it to be reauthorized.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to, I know Leonard is waiting, Leonard Gonzalez, the board member, is waiting to speak. So maybe before we get into more comment, maybe Leonard, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thank you, Mark. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the invitation to have to this discussion and just to have the conversation about some of the things that that we see here, you know, in front of the industry. My name is Leonard Gonzalez. I'm the executive director for the Northern California Laborers Training and Retraining Trust Fund. We cover from Tulare County all the way up to the California-Oregon border. And thank you, Brother Jeremy, for your words and information and awareness as to what's going on in the industry here in California. For us, I'll give you a little history about us, just real quick, and kind of tie in some of the and piggyback off of Brother Jeremy, what he was mentioning. We were actually founded in 1966 And we were actually funded through the Manpower Development and Training Act. We received about 700,000. We trained 540 within our first year. We then relocated to here in San Ramon, where we sit now. And since then, just to bring to, we trained 540 in our first year. So fast forward to now, we're running about 4,200 apprentices within just our craft alone, which is the laborers. We cover heavy highway, demolition, environmental, things, infrastructure, and a lot of things in that area. 4,200 apprentices we have actively. We received just over 10,000 applications last year. We onboarded 2,600 new apprentices. We graduated 1,000 apprentices last year. We terminated 1,100 individuals. And here's a key thing is that we received just over 21,000 DAS 140 and 142s. So what that means is that those are projects that are being funded publicly that have to submit either requests for apprentices specifically to laborers and the man hours that are going to be on those particular projects. We taught over 1,400 classes, of which 259 were actually pre-apprenticeship classes with the partnerships that we have throughout the state of California. Our total training hours are about 420,000 hours. So that kind of just gives you a view just specifically from a laborers, not, tie that into the carpenters, the electricians, the plumbers, the pipe fitters. And so the reason we I bring that up is that, Jeremy mentioned SB1. We were a huge supporter of SB1. Our, my boss, our business manager, Oscar De La Torre, in the Northern California District Council of Laborers, as well as Southern Cal, we put up $5 million to support that bill because we saw how important it was for us to develop programs that would develop pipelines and access into the industry. And I agree 100%. It's, how do we connect these programs that we're funding at the state level to the projects that are happening within our communities and in our areas? And that's a challenge. It is because, we have over 24 partnerships, pre-apprenticeship partnerships, just as the laborers. And the key thing to that is it's just not the laborers program. And what's key is what Brother Jeremy said is it's the multi-core craft curriculum. It is the foundation into the industry. OSHA 10, first aid CPR, confined space. We happen to do the traffic control. We go into the HAZWAPER 40. Unfortunately, in California, we have a fire season now. In order to go in and do the remediation and cleanup of that work, you have to have a HAZWAPER 40. So we integrate that into the pre-apprenticeship programs. And so we're looking at individuals that, in our case, we partner with Folsom Prism, CalPIA, CalPAL, Solano County Workforce, Fresno County Workforce, Chuck Riojas, our brother down in the Central Valley Training Center. So we have these extensive programs. So we feel we're developing a good, skilled, and trained individual to hit these projects. But I also sit with the management side, the contractor side, and I hear them saying, we make these requests and we have a shortage of individuals to bring on board, which is interesting because somewhere along the way we're missing each other, because here we are, we're funding these programs and we have these great candidates that are ready to work, skilled and trained, but yet the contractors and those projects are saying we don't have enough people to hire. We can't find a qualified candidate, and I think that's where HRTP and its funding, where I think it can bridge some of these gaps. Look at some of the benchmarks and some of the opportunities to develop those pipelines, those programs, and access those opportunities. We are working with the Construction Education Foundation under AGC, which was funded under the HRTP, and I know Erin and her team are doing a great job to try and get more of those signatory contractors involved in accessing and hiring these individuals as they come out of the program. As well, with the ERICA grant, the equal representation in construction apprenticeship, we are a recipient of that. We provide, up to $10,000 of support to our apprentices. Females obviously are the primary focus, but also we extend that over to those individuals that have children and need that support. I heard the comment about female and more participation. I can speak, for our brothers and sisters in the trades. We are actively holding events. We're holding an event March 7th. I'll put it out there and I'll send it out. March 7th, here in San Ramon, we're holding the Women in Construction Conference. It's our second conference, and it's specifically to target females to give them information and access to the industry, to our program. And we host that both in NorCal and in Southern California with our brother and sister, David Espinoza, who runs Southern California. I think just for the purpose of this conversation and just, I know Brother Jeremy hit on a lot of those points. Those are some of the things that we're working on. I'll be in Central Coast. I'll be doing the Central Coast site walk tomorrow in Castroville. We are partners with the Monterey County Workforce Investment Board, delivering that program. We also work with Tamia. I know Tamia, I don't know if you're still on the call. We just piloted a program with the Dogwood Grant. Tamia, you know what that acronym means. I don't, but we basically were providing some training for our refinery workers who are obviously going to be dislocated due to some of the closures, and retraining them to actually go into the construction industry as a construction craft labor. So again, thank you, Madam Chair, for your time. And I really do compliment you and kind of with your leadership and the direction that I see this board going in. So thank you.
Thank you. One question to both you, Leonard and Jeremy, that I hear that there's a lot of potential there's capacity needs in the construction and the trades. There's capacity needs, and then there's almost like the capacity constraint of the apprenticeship programs. Leonard, you just said something like, I think I heard you said 10,000 applicants, and you had 2,600 onboarded. Is there, if you had greater capacity, where's the friction? I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, so that's where, see, the DS-140s are the DS-140s are important because those are public works jobs. That doesn't include private work. So you have the private work and you have public. And what dictates apprentices onboarding are the locals. And I think that's something is understanding how it works on our end. I represent the Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee, which is the training portion. Then you have the locals, that's the union. They're responsible for the dispatch and oversee the job sites. So our supply, we supply based on their demand and the projects. And so and there's also ratios. So for us, it's a 4-to-1 ratio. You can have 4 apprentices to 1 journeyman. So if you only have 1 journeyman on that project, you're only able to take 4 apprentices. So 4 journeymen to 1 apprentice. So you have 4 journeymen, you can request 1 apprentice. So it's just one of those things where understanding how the process works on our industry. And again, it's jurisdictional. You have carpenters that are going to have their man hours and their requests, laborers, electricians, and so on. And so the key is, and Jeremy could speak to this, is that sometimes we don't all play well in the sandbox. So it's bringing all the building trades, organized labor to the table to get the buy-in for some of these programs. And in some areas, Fresno, Chuck, fantastic. Central Coast, fantastic. In other areas, not so much. And that's our opportunity to get better.
Well, I would just add, Madam Chair, picking up on what Leonard said, we as the labor movement, the construction labor movement, we all could play nicer with each other in certain areas of the state. But I would also say that, picking up on Leonard's point, Madam Chair, it's not capacity. Leonard's JATC is the JATCs up and down the state. They can ramp up. You guys can ramp up to meet capacity. All of the union JATCs can ramp up to meet capacity. It does not do a prospective or an apprentice who's in the program any good to be in the program and have there be no work to go do. So think back to 2008, 2009. I don't know what Leonard's union was going through, but I know some unions were upwards of 45% unemployed, right? And there were very few apprenticeship programs taking on new apprentices because there was no work. Everything dried up. We remember those days. And so our programs can meet demand. They can ramp up, they can expand, but they're not going to do it unless there are job sites to go work at. Because there's nothing for the apprentices to learn on. Not nothing. There aren't job sites for them to learn at.
All right, any comment on the construction presentation, Leonard or Jeremy's comments?
I had one comment. So, first of all, I just want to acknowledge Jeremy's comments about the old timers, and I guess we plead guilty. Thank you, Jeremy, as well as a few others on here. Second of all, though, and great comments. I mean, we've even, we're sort of comparing a couple different industries here, which is kind of interesting, like health and construction, et cetera, and similarities and differences. And interesting, we have adopted the same bonuses, incentives for our students at the construction industry that Jeremy was talking about, which I think are fantastic, where people get bonuses along the way, get stipends along the way. And of course, that's an issue that we've talked about before in state funding programs, because state funding programs all have different barriers and advantages. So you really have to kind of, brand those together to make everything work. The question that's interesting to me, though, and one of the challenges, and probably a hard question to answer, and this to Allison as well in your job, with the Trump administration's emphasis on performance and a whole lot less emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and many of our programs have federal funding along with state funding. Have you made any changes to your programs because of that? I mean, in health, we definitely have made some changes. We certainly want to keep up equity, diversity, inclusion, but we really are concentrating on performance now and really accentuating the performance numbers more than we do equity and diversity like we did a couple of years ago. Is the construction industry doing the same thing on their federal funded programs?
I think Leonard will be the best person to answer that.
I can tell you, we haven't changed one thing. We are doing business as usual. We are training apprentices. We're working in the communities. We're working in the prisons. We're working, we're doing all our best to fill the need for both of our management, our contractors, and our locals. So we haven't changed one thing one bit. If anything, we've expanded, and we've had to look at some of our curriculum and redesign it based on the industry needs.
Well, and Bob, I would add, and Leonard can add some color here too on this. When I mentioned that $75, $85 per hour and how all the benefits are on the check, one of the things on the check, Leonard, is per hour bit back to the apprenticeship program.
Back to the program, absolutely.
And so, we apprentices and journeymen and journeywomen on public projects fund their own programs. And right. We get some help from our management partners too. But we don't rely on a lot of state or federal funds. I don't mean to paint too broad a brush, Leonard. You can tell me if I'm wrong, maybe you guys do, but a lot of our programs don't. So we're able, as Leonard said, we're able to expand and lean into DEI and lean into trying to keep a good thing going because we don't have some of the things that other parts of the economy are going through that have to respond to our current administration in DC.
Jeremy, you're 100% correct. In our case, Oscar, he does all the bargaining and negotiations with the associations. And, honestly, in the last 2 years or the last negotiation, he was able to bargain, an increase for contribution to the training trust which is what I oversee. And so, you're right. These are contractors, these are business owners, and they're signing off on that. And so that's a huge sign for us, is that we're doing something right and the projects are there and they see the benefit in the work that we do, not only on the apprenticeship side, because we present at all the associations, we have a state of the industry, and we let them know the workforce development and the pre-apprenticeship programs that we're involved with. And they're very supportive and they buy into those projects.
And then I'll just speak on the state side in terms of how we've addressed it. We're navigating as it comes, right? So particularly related to workforce development and apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeship programs, we are actively looking for filling needs, and those needs are in our underserved communities, or with communities of color. They are across the state, and we are actually doing. I appreciate the partnerships with our locals and regions and our trades. because I think it's showing and it's proving itself well. The thing that we do on our end, particularly since we are the holders of many contracts, the initiators of many contracts with federal dollars, is we are doing things slightly differently based on federal interim final rulings on disadvantaged business enterprises, or DBEs. And that is one of the things that we are more actively responding to in the present day. The interim IFR issued in October directed that we no longer use a race or gender as a qualifying factor as a group or as a condition for qualifying as a DBE, which requires us to reevaluate all the DBEs in our current pool. You can have individual circumstances of that, must provide that, but that is something that we're still going through. So it affects business and how contractors and subs all look at contracts, but in terms of this work here, it hasn't changed our approach at all. So we're just at navigation and a little bit of a wayward path to getting the final outcome we're all looking for.
All right, thank you for that robust discussion. Final call for any public comment related to this topic or any general public comment. Any public comment online?
No public comments online.
Any public comment on Zoom? All right, well, thank you all so much for this discussion today. Madam Chair, did you want to give some final remarks before we adjourn the meeting?
Well, first of all, just thank you everyone for your participation, the presenters. Thank you for your insight, expertise, and just the commitment to the work that you do. It's inspiring. I just was reflecting on the last comments regarding, DEI and what's happening on a federal level. I can tell you that I spend my time primarily in the private sector dealing with probably, many innovation economy companies, from the likes of larger companies like Uber down to smaller startups. And I'm encouraged that I would say 80% of the DEI initiatives are staying in place in so many of these companies. We're just reskinning how we talk about them. Rather than saying DEI, we talk about, matching expertise even on a board with the, whoever the customer bases of the company. So if a company is sells to primarily women, you need more, female representation, and that goes on down. So I think we're all trying to figure out ways to work around some of the constraints that are being put in place on the federal level, and find innovative ways to continue to serve our communities. That's it. I thank everyone again, and thank you, staff and team, for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay. Thank you.